Welcome to the TBD podcast. It's called the To Be Determined. And what that means is I want to share with you guys the process on our come up. We don't know exactly where we're going, but we have like a goal and a vision and a plan of where we want to be. And kind of want to share like the steps I'm taking in my business and the people I'm talking to and the stuff that it's helping me grow right now. And today's episode number 7, and today's guest is Jon Dodart. Am I saying that right? Dodart?
Dodart. Yeah. So like if you imagined an E after the O, you get there. But I go by Hey You. I go by really
Hey, you.
Yeah.
Hey, you. Yeah, awesome, man. And what we're going to be talking about today a little bit is you're, from what I understand, is a contracts lawyer. And we're going to kind of go over contracts, how to structure them, the best way to ensure that they have the correct verbiage in them, and then how to basically make sure you're set up to where you're protected. So welcome, man. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure being here. And, I have heard so much about you and all the amazing things that you're doing. And I'm really excited to discuss everything. And we do more than just contracts, but, we like to think that we do contracts very well and keep clients in a really prime position.
Yeah, so let's dive right into that. What do you? So what is it that you do? So contracts, how do you help business owners from? Let's just say that he's just starting out, and then he's coming to you saying, "Hey, what do I do to just get going?"
Sure. So we're a full service law firm. So our law firm's solar legal. We can't say that we specialize in solar, but we do primarily focus on solar clients, nearly exclusively. One thing that we did when we started our law firm and launched it was we wanted to kind of focus on one specific area of law that really needed more legal representation, more help. With all of my friends being involved in solar and, meeting so many amazing people in the industry, we realized very quickly that there's a massive gap between all these really successful businesses and successful individuals and proper foundation for contracts, business formation, how to take it to the next level. And so we created Solar Legal based upon that need in this industry. And really the way it came about for me personally was Jake Hess, some of you may know him. He's in the industry. We've been friends for years, and I've done, some things here and there for him. And when he created SolarCon and when I helped him with the legal work for it, he asked if I would speak at the first SolarCon, and I did. And Danny Pesci introduced me, and Jake Hess introduced me. And they got up and they said, this is the lawyer for solar. And that nickname, I thought, oh, that's such a catchy nickname. I love that. So when we created Solar Legal, I started the trademark process for the lawyer for solar. So we're trademark pending on that. And I've taken on solar clients and found them to just be so much fun to work with because everyone in solar is such a go-getter and motivated person and stuff. And so my background's in trial litigation. I'm a litigator. I've litigated for the federal government, primarily civil litigation. We do some consumer litigation too, things like that. But we decided about a year ago to just start focusing on solar, and we built a law firm around it. And this is kind of 2024 is going to be really our big launch for the firm with the rebranding and everything else.
Oh, so you guys are just getting up to where you're launching that. It's like a thing that you're kind of launching right now.
So
a new thing that you're doing.
We've been in practice for years. So it was running through my personal law firm through the law offices of Jon Dodart, but we wanted to, kind of transition because that law firm itself did other areas of law. And we wanted to make sure that if we're going to be in solar, we want to be 100% in. One thing I think that is the way for you get success is if you go all in on something. So that's really what we're doing.
Yeah, 100%. That is, a lot of people always talk to me about, hey, I'm thinking about transferring like businesses and just doing this part-time and doing this part-time. And I was like, yeah, you can do it, but you're going to get part-time results. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you go all in, the upfront work, as you know, is a fuck ton of upton work. But then once you get going, you're off to the races. But people get past, a lot of people get past that upfront work, and then they're like, oh, it was so hard. Now let's change. I was just talking. It's funny. I was just talking to my barber, and he probably has like 500 or 600 people that come into his shop every day. Like
Oh, wow.
does well for himself, and but he's like, oh, I'm thinking about getting into sales, like part time. Do you think that'd be a good sales gig? And I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? Like you've already put, like, he has a nice shop, he has all these, like, everything set up, but he just doesn't see the big, like, he's already put in the hard work, so he's like kind of burned out. But it's kind of funny. We put in the hard work up front, and then we get to the easy part, and then we're like, okay, this is too hard now, but you already
Yeah.
did all the hard work.
Well,
Bob.
it's fun. So I have worked with clients like in all the avenues of the solar industry. So really large, well-established clients, to people just starting off. You know, they've been a summer sales rep, and they go, "Look, I wanted to do this on my own, set up my own business." So I've seen all dynamics, and you
Yeah.
see the people that go all in have a totally different set of results than those who were like, "Well, you know, maybe I'll just do some like on the side sales." And there's nothing wrong with on the side sales if you're selling a Gulfstream, right? Or a
Yeah,
Learjet.
yeah.
You know, a
Yeah.
little part-time of a, $50 million commissions, all right.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Can't hate
this
that.
type of business, exactly. This type of business requires that you go all in. And that same thing for our law firm. We wanted to make sure that we were available to be there for clients. For example, all of my clients all have my personal cell phone, so I get calls and texts at 2 a.m. Like, hey, I'm thinking about this thing. Not even just legally related. My clients will call and text and say, hey, I got this great idea. What do you think about this? And they just bounce off
Hmm.
ideas from me. And that's really why we wanted to stay in this industry and focus on it, is because the people in it are so, uh, dynamic and creative that we wanted
Hmm.
to be in that space and figure out a way to really firm up these foundational ideas and help their growth.
Yeah, this is pretty interesting for me personally because like kind of a backstory about me. Then I've been in the installation side of solar for the last like 10 plus years, and then just recently we've launched our sales side. And the reason why we kind of decided to launch our sales side was because how I was doing it before is I would go to other EPCs and I would be installing and fulfilling their work. If they had like in-house crews, or maybe they didn't, I would do all the fulfillment work, and I'd have a contract with them. They would give me a contract that have all the verbiage and whatever, like, this is your side of it, and then this is my side of it. So I would do all the upfront work. They would set up payment terms, and a lot of times those payment terms would be net 30.
Yeah.
And a lot can go wrong in net 30
Yeah,
because
I know.
you're almost 60 days out from doing the job to get paid. And so by the time you're getting paid, you could, like, we get to where we were doing 5 jobs a day. So you're, a ton of, you're two or
Easy.
300 grand a week, or even a month behind on pay. And then the company's having a hard time following up and getting all the stuff funded. And then we ended up getting, fucked. So I want to get into like how do contracts work, and how important are they? And then how can we, like, we as business owners, and then also like business to business, and then business to employees, how do
Yeah.
we protect ourselves, and kind of do that? How important are they, and how do we protect
Yeah.
ourselves?
So
And
great
are they even
questions.
important?
Yeah. Well, okay. So let's get into it. So great question on contracts. So the first thing that I realized very quickly when I got into solar is I started seeing the exact same contract come up over and over and over. And when you did a little research, I can't say the name of the company, but it's an online source for contracts. And everyone was using the same contract because they would be a sales rep, or they'd be associated with a company. They'd get the contract and they'd recycle the same contract. And then they'd do it
Hmm.
again, and then their reps would do it again. So I found the same contract, like, I'd say well over 50 times in the industry.
Hmm.
And the problem is, in that contract, which I will not exploit, but in that contract is a massive hole, massive, that exposes the people using it to a lot of liability. And so when I saw that, I thought, there's no way that people are building these highly successful, multi-million-dollar companies around a flawed contract that they spent $50 or $100 or whatever online to download. I thought, it's like leaving your Ferrari in a bad neighborhood of town and putting the keys on the car and being like, well, I'll just check the app on my phone occasionally and make sure it's locked, or hope for it, or whatever, hiding your keys underneath the wheel well. It's
Yeah.
mind-boggling that people would set up something so valuable and protect it so little, especially when good legal does not cost that much. A lot of my clients always have this saying that you can pay the money for your legal upfront and pay that initial investment, or you can pay 10 to 20 times what you're going to down the road through a lawsuit, through other liabilities, and then still need the attorney to dig you out of that hole. I have taken some clients' contracts that with like a simple, $300 fix or some additional time in working on it and tweaking it has saved them from tens of thousands of dollars of liabilities that did get exploited later on. And luckily, we had firmed up, reorganized their contracts, reorganized things, and saved them tons of money. So to answer your initial question, are contracts, valuable, needed in the industry? They are essential. Far too often, everyone has a handshake deal in this industry, and you got to negotiate like your enemies with everyone so that you can work together like your best friends. That's the only way to do it.
Oh, that's a good point. So you negotiate like your enemies so you can work together like friends.
Absolutely, like best friends. Yeah. And the reason is that it's a marriage, right? You have to negotiate and make sure everything is clear. What happens when this issue comes up? What happens when when there is a dispute between partners? What happens when this employee files this lawsuit? Whatever it might be. And you need to make sure that you got a clear roadmap of what to do in that instance. Because if you just had a handshake deal, that handshake deal goes out the window really quick. But when you negotiated like your enemies and you're working together like your best friends, it's all clear. The answer's in front of you. You know what the next step is. You know what everybody's going to do or how it's going to resolve. And it makes things dramatically better. And people exit even a bad scenario with a good taste in their mouth because they went into it knowing what to expect, and they exit knowing what to expect. So yeah.
Yeah, so this leads me to the kind of the next question. The reason, or at least for me, the reason why I'm afraid or why I don't or why I haven't hired a lawyer, hired an attorney, and we go to these easy online platforms is because we're afraid of the cost. And we're like, we go to online, hey, you Google contracts, whatever, and then one of these companies pops up, and so you're like, okay, we'll do this, and it seems easy. They make it sound easy and all that, but then you're not protected. But the big thing is we're afraid, at least I'm afraid, is okay, if I go hire a lawyer, maybe I don't even know what I'm talking about, and then maybe I'm charged. Most lawyers, at least in civil cases, right, or like a drunk driving or something, you hire them and you're hiring them for $2,500. I'm like, why am I paying $2,500? But you're saying you can. So how do you go about hiring a good lawyer, and how do you know that this lawyer is a good lawyer for what you're doing? Another experience I have too, the reason I asked this is because I actually hired a contracts lawyer here in Arizona, and I paid him up front $2,500 for a contract. I told him I needed to say this and this, just like a generic, nothing crazy. I followed up with him for probably the last 3 or 4 months, and it's been over a year, and he's done nothing. He's always like, "Oh, I'll do it." And then I have that experience, and then I have experience of dealing with some alcohol related lawyers, and they've just sucked. You know what I mean? So then we try to find the easiest path to resistance. So back to my question is, how do you go about finding a good lawyer, and how do you know that this lawyer is a good lawyer for what you need?
So great question. So the first thing that you need to make sure you do, hold on one second. There we go. The first thing you need to make sure that you do is understand that there is no one size fits all lawyer, period, myself included. I get along with some people amazing. And then sometimes you get people where it just doesn't work. The way that you want to represent a client isn't the way that they need to be represented. And at the end of the day, it's about your client. It's not about you as the lawyer. So I will be the first person in a situation to tell a client, hey, I am not the lawyer for you, but I probably know the guy that is. And you want a lawyer who's willing to sacrifice business to get you the representation that you need, even if it's not them. And so having a lawyer that's willing to communicate with you and understand your situation before even really getting into don't worry about it, we're going to do great, we're going to kick butt, draft this contract, whatever it is, that's really important. You want the lawyer that puts you first. But the second aspect to that too is that you want to make sure that the lawyer that you hire isn't billing you to learn your business first. So the number one issue that I see with a lot of these lawyers that do have solar clients is they take between 10 to 20 hours to get up to speed in solar, knowing the terms, knowing the parties, knowing how to negotiate these types of contracts. And they are billing the client for that. So some of these initial fees, that retainer, let's say you pay a $2,500 retainer. Most lawyers nowadays are between $550 an hour. I have seen attorneys upwards of $2,500 an hour, and they're going to bill you 10 to 20 hours just to learn your business. Now, there's some rules regarding that, and every state is specific, and they'll have different ways to regulate their lawyers. But nevertheless, you are paying to educate that attorney instead of having an attorney who is already there, who can just pick up and start from where you need to be. So that's very important. When people are looking at attorneys, they should ask the attorney, how many solar clients do you have? Or do you have any other clients that are already in this industry? If they tell you, well, no, I don't have any clients in this industry, but don't worry, I've got experience with it, then understand they will be billing you for that education, or more likely than not to learn what they need to for your contract. With my law firm, with Solar Legal, we are all practitioners in this space. And so, you don't have to explain net metering to me to be able to get in there and understand how to set up a contract. We're there, we're ready to go, and we just get to it. The second thing that you want to do when looking into a lawyer is understand how you are retaining that lawyer. So there's multiple models of payment. It sounds like the attorney that you hired, I'm not sure if he was flat rate or hourly.
This was a retainer. It was a retainer.
So a retainer, for those that don't understand, so a retainer is money that you would provide to an attorney. It is money that goes into an account that the attorney then bills against. It's not necessarily money that they've earned or are able to keep. It's just money sitting in an account, waiting for them to be able to bill against it to earn it. So if an attorney takes your retainer and performs no work, that money is still yours. It gets returned to you. And that's very important because there is a lot of shady attorneys out there that you want to be very careful with. But with a retainer, usually what happens is you hire them for a specific job. They then bill their hourly rate normally against that retainer and deduct it as they go. Whether you give an attorney $2,500 on retainer, $10,000, $50,000, whatever it might be, that money is not that attorney's until they have billed against it, until they've performed work for you and billed against it. Now, there are some limited exceptions to that. So, I can't say blanketly, but more often than not, that's correct. Yeah. So if you're flat rate, for example, let's say you hire an attorney, you tell him what you want him to do, and you say, what's this going to cost me? And he goes, I can do this contract for $2,500. That is what we would consider a flat rate contract, meaning that he has to perform and give you that contract, whatever your term period is, for that amount. And then he would produce it. Now, if you have an hourly attorney and you've given him $2,500 and there's not a set due date or timeline, he might drain that $2,500 in the first week and say, hey, I'm going to need another $5,000 or $10,000 to execute this. So it's very important to know how you are retaining that attorney and how you are paying that attorney. If you have something very basic, you might want to look into a flat rate type relationship with an attorney, because then you know exactly what you're paying, you know exactly what you're going to get. And normally there's a time frame in there that you negotiate with your attorney of, I'd like this done in the next 120 days or 60 days, whatever it might be. And you get it done in there. Just like everybody else, you can always fire your attorney. But one thing that I like about our firm is that there's so many different models of what you can do with an attorney to make it where it's cost friendly. So my law firm, when we first decided to really make a strong push with solar clients, we found that there were so many amazing individuals that were just starting businesses that didn't really exactly know what to do to set up their business, how to form it, how to protect it, those things. And so I wanted to make sure that those people weren't priced out of good legal work, good legal representation. So we work with all clients across the spectrum. I have flat rate clients where they say, hey, I just need this one thing done. What could you charge me, or what would it take? And then we can price it for that. I have other clients, and this is a specific model that works with my firm that I actually think a lot of the legal industry is going to be starting to head into that space. But we price, we have a scenario where we can price like a monthly subscription service effectively, or a monthly charge for more or less unlimited legal work. Now, obviously, there's some exceptions to that. For example, litigation's not covered in that, things like that. But with unlimited, we can say, all right, let's say you need 30 contracts this month, or you need 10 contracts and you need some help with your employee manual or whatever it might be. You're not worrying about, hey, am I going to, pay $10,000 this month and, $50 next month for an hourly rate, or with flat rate, you're not worrying that you're not going to have enough money to cover what you need to get it done. With like an unlimited type subscription service, you get everything no matter what it takes. And I, as the attorney, what's nice about that is I'm not having to be concerned of, I got to bill X amount of hours on this or track it. And with flat rate, I'm not worrying that, I didn't bill it right, or like this is going to take way more time. It works for both the clients and us because we make sure that we are there for whatever they need and we're able to produce whatever they need to get it done.
Yeah.
So that's a unique model that we have in our firm.
Yeah, I like that a lot, because that's the thing. A lot of times, that's why I think that's also why a lot of people don't hire attorneys, because the first time they hire one, they're like, this fucking sucked, and then they don't want to do it again. So they kind of just look at, hey, what is this other company doing? Let's just use their contractor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But having a subscription-based model, then you're like, you actually have a relationship with your attorney, and you can say, hey, I have this. Okay, well, cool. I didn't even know I need this, and now can you help me with this? That kind of leads me to my next question is like, when is the best time when you're first starting a business? When is the best time to hire a lawyer? Do you do it right out the gate, or do you wait till you get to a certain net worth, or what do you recommend?
So there's multiple answers to this, but I have to be upfront. I have started businesses before. I've been a part of businesses before. I have been a part of businesses before I was a lawyer, and now being a lawyer, having started and owned businesses, I can tell you without a doubt, the best time to start a business, to get a lawyer, is as quickly as possible. The moment you start getting this idea and you start putting together your funding for it, you should find an attorney who's going to be a part of your journey and part of that process immediately, and figure out how to make it work financially. Your attorney should be a partner in your business, not an actual partner, but someone who's there with you saying, hey, you could structure it this way, and here's the benefits of that. Or you could structure it this way, and here's the benefits of that. Or, hey, you need to be careful here, because if you don't put this type of a contract in with this type of an employee, you can expose yourself to a significant lawsuit or a lot of liability. And lawyers are very talented at being able to see things that a business person wouldn't. A creative, a sales guy, a saleswoman, any kind of creative or professional, we see things differently. Now, one thing I recommend is that when you're looking for an attorney, you want to find somebody who has worked with new businesses. If you can find an attorney who has litigated cases himself, that helps in the drafting of your agreements. With my firm specifically, we have kind of two different models, or two different lawyers with two different models. We have kind of one who's primarily transactionally based, meaning that we do a lot of contracts, formations, mergers, acquisitions, things like that. And then my side, we do a little bit more litigation. So we're in the litigated issues in trial, mediation, negotiations, settlements, things like that. But both of us have built companies and helped grow them from the start. And he's litigated, I've litigated, we understand those tracks. So when I draft a contract, or when I start and organize a company, I'm looking at it from a standpoint of, if I was to sue this company, what holes would I be looking for? And I work it in reverse to make sure that that thing is structured so well it's going to be protected. And when you do that from the start, you have built a foundation for your company that not only is going to secure you from future liabilities, but it's something that you can. It's a portable business. You can sell it, grow it. You know that you built something that is going to last. And I'm sure you've seen Stockley in the industry. A lot of these companies are not built this way, and that's why we've seen a lot of companies literally close their doors overnight, not pay their sales reps, not pay their installers, because they were foundationally really weak and they were not established well. And there's very little that you can do on the other side when you're suing these companies, when they just disappear and take the assets. So it's very, very, very difficult.
Yeah. So this kind of leads me to a story that's happened to me, or a situation with contracts. So I had a company that I was working for, and I had the contract signed. We both signed the contracts, and this was like an ongoing contract. It wasn't like per job. It was like, you agreed to install solar for X amount price for however many jobs, then you have to have them done by this time. You have to have us photos, and then if we want you to go back, we'll call you, and you have to be out there within a certain amount of time. So we had a working relationship for 3-4 plus years, and then the company fell onto I don't know, they told me they were going through funding, trying to get more funding to, I don't know if go public or what it was. But then they kind of said, hey, we're bringing all of our installs in house. We're not going to have you do anymore, but we'll just have you finish up the ones that you've done. And I wasn't doing the inspection, so I wasn't getting cleared to the finish line. I was just getting my part done, giving them the photos, and then invoicing for it. Like they dragged that out. They drug it out. We were owed like $700,000 at the time. And this was like 2 or 3 months of work, so it wasn't like very far behind. But then it started like 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. So it ended up like then they would pay little chunks, which is fucking worse because then you get little chunks and you have all these bills due, so it all goes. So then you never have money, you know. But in the contract, and they got down to the very end of it, and then they owed us like down to the last $100,000. And the guy says, I want to take off $20,000 off of this because we've had to go back out and fix some of the jobs, some of your jobs, and we have X amount of hours in it. And I'm saying, and I told him, I'm like, well, you guys never called us for that. That's free labor we would have done if you guys would have called us. There was never a disconnect in communication. We never missed their calls. Every time they'd send us emails or anything like that, it was answered. And then it got down to the point where I was like, I mean, it's got down to 20,000. I'm like, well, what do you do? And that we needed the money, and they're obviously a bigger company than we are. Mm-hmm. So, but when we had the contract and everything, and there was no, to me, I didn't feel like it was worth fighting. Sure. Is that something worth fighting? And then how do you protect yourself from that? And that's what made me think like, and I've had this happen multiple times with multiple different companies. And then now I'm at the point where I'm thinking like, dude, these contracts are kind of like a locked door. You know, they only keep the honest people out. You know, if somebody really wants to break it, then what recourse do you have, and how do you protect yourself?
So I'll always say this up front, right? So anything that I say is just kind of general legal advice. And the reason I really stress that is until you get into a case and you see all the facts and evidence, and until you understand the other side's position, it's always hard to know specifically, oh yeah, this is what I would do in that scenario. I would do X, Y, Z. But kind of generally with some of these facts and circumstances. So first thing I would have wanted to do is make sure in that initial contract that it's very clear on the timeline for payment, the actions in the event of a default, and what kind of interest is going to accrue in that time period. Besides that, you always want to make sure that there's some kind of penalty for people not adhering to their agreement. The contracts that I've seen, the contracts that I've seen more often than not are very clear in some aspects, and then very silent in everything else. Everybody's focused on just, hey, when everything's good between us, this is what we're going to do. But good contracts will also say, hey, when the shit hits the fan, here's what we're going to do. And in your case specifically, I think that would have been really helpful because the moment that they were paying late, that should have been the discussion with your attorney saying, hey, they're paying late, and having all of that foundational next steps to know exactly what you're going to do, and starting that process of hopefully informal resolution. The other thing too, people are always thinking, well, I'm going to sue. I'm going to file this lawsuit. They're not paying. He's not paying. I'm not getting anything. We're going to sue. And the reality is that informal negotiation and informal resolution, alternative dispute resolution methods should always be employed. If you looked on a national average, about 1 to 3 cases actually ever go fully forward to trial. You want an attorney that's gone to trial so that they know how to do that. But where 1 to 3 cases actually go to trial, you want an attorney that's very skilled in alternative dispute resolutions, especially in formal negotiations and in informal resolutions of things. That can be mediation, where you just, you hire a mediator and you go in and you discuss the issues and you try to come to a conclusion. That can be arbitration, whether it's binding or not, and even potentially fully filing a lawsuit in wherever it might be in the court in your jurisdiction. But those things need to be very clear in a contract. The way that my firm drafts agreements and contracts, we create a very clear and specific step process of what we're going to do if that contract breaks down. And we build it in a way that it's going to be cost effective to figure out what the solution is going to be. In your scenario specifically, I would have started early on when so much was owed. I would have made sure that there was a very clear process for payment. And if anything, maybe renegotiate the agreement and say, hey, you're 30 days late. I need to put a new agreement in place that dictates when I'm getting paid and how I'm getting paid. And then
Well,
at the end, you would have known.
so this is the issue though, and this is the issue with a lot of people getting paid in the industry right now is they're afraid because the sales company has all the money and they need paid. I mean they're owed 8, 10,000, 8, 9, not a ton of money, but to them it's a lot of money. The business they're like, it's so how do you protect yourself and how do you make it? How do you when do you decide that it's worth it to go to an attorney because obviously hiring an attorney it costs money, and if you're already not getting paid, you're like, fuck, I can't keep spending money because we have this money that's due. What do you do in that situation?
Well, first and foremost, the attorney should be part of your company from the start. So, if you can get an attorney that either you have on retainer, if there's an issue, right, then you call him and he bills against the retainer, or like with our law firm, some kind of monthly service where the attorney's there. Honestly, even just having a good relationship with an attorney that you can call and bounce ideas off of to say, hey, here's what's happening. What do you think? People should never be afraid to call an attorney for an initial consultation. Most attorneys will have some kind of a charge, depending. That's kind of been an industry trend and the legal trend for an initial consultation, but that might be $200 or maybe $300. And that initial consultation, they will tell you more information that would give you better advice as to what to do. With my clients specifically, every case is unique. I do examine contracts to know, what that threshold should be for us starting a formal litigation process. And it depends on the client, it depends on the business, and it depends on really how much is owed. But in more instances than not, you're going to want to be over a certain threshold. Maybe that's 20,000, maybe that's 100,000, and really maybe that is 5,000 for your business. But you need to know where those thresholds are, and an attorney would help you set that, so specifically with your business, that certain level of loss that's okay, and a certain level of loss that you have to pursue.
And then do you say, okay, so I'm guessing once you're working with an attorney, you say, well, let's say we set the threshold at 10,000. So they get to 11,000 and the 30 days late past due. Then do we say, is that when do we send them a letter? Hey, intent to, do you know what liens are?
Yeah, of course.
Construction liens. So do you send that like intent to lien, or do you say, what do you recommend on that route? Because in Arizona, you also have to file a pre-lien.
Yep.
And then you have to file a pre-lien, and then a lien. But the pre-lien has to be filed within a certain amount of time, otherwise you're not covered. And then I was looking that route, and then I also had a contract. I'm like, dude, I'm fucked here.
Let me propose something different here, right? So everyone, well, I shouldn't say everyone. That's kind of a generality. When looking at lawsuits, and when someone has screwed you over, or someone owes you money, or a company owes you money, most people's instinct is to jump to the most aggressive form of litigation immediately.
Yep.
They're mad.
Yep.
They want somebody to come in. They want that bulldog. They want to, burn down the other company's business and ruin them and everything else. The problem is the other side probably feels the same way in some way. They probably feel slighted. They probably feel jaded. Somebody has not paid them maybe. And the first thing that I do when I get into any form of dispute resolution is I calm down the energy. You take a step back and you say, look, everyone's got problems. Everybody's got something going on. If these guys were making, $1 billion a year, they'd probably pay you the 20,000 that they owe you. So maybe something else is going on here. The most cost-effective way to resolve this is through understanding the other side's concerns and finding a compromise solution that works well for both of you. Some of my best settlements could have gone to trial day one. I mean, big multi-million-dollar settlements, issues that we could have gone to trial for, and really just been in 5 years or longer of very serious active litigation. But instead, slowing things down, talking with the other side, trying to understand why they're not paying, provided bigger solutions for my clients to actually get a better deal by a negotiated agreement that we informally resolved that was paying out over time. They made some money by being patient and not doing that. Instead of, if they had, filed suit, they would have spent those attorney's fees. They would have been in they'd still be in active litigation. And there's always a risk that you lose. You could spend 5 years and, lose $100,000 or $500,000 in litigation sometimes. So I think the most important thing that you do is you work with an attorney who is not giving you the fluff. That's not coming at you saying, we're going to hammer the desk, we're going to destroy them, they're going to cry every day. And that's not the attorney you want. It might be hypothetically, but in reality, it's not. You want an attorney who is calm, level-headed, who tells you, here is the cost-benefit analysis of litigating versus let's discuss, let's negotiate, let's try mediation and say, hey, you cheated me out of 20 grand. I'm willing to be patient. But to do that, we need to make sure that the interest percentages are there, or maybe future business is there, or something else. And almost always there is something beneficial for my client. Well, there's almost always something beneficial for my client, but there's also something beneficial for the other side too. I try to create win-win deals because that way, this industry is so small. You're going to probably see these people again. You'll see them at SolarCon. You're going to see them in town. You're going to see them dealing with the same things. You don't want to burn bridges. You want to create solutions and opportunities.
Yeah, and that's actually funny that you say that because that's what I did. I was like very professional. Like even though in my mind, I'm like, I'm gonna fucking kill these guys, But then I'm like, I'm gonna fucking kill these guys. Okay, sir, if there's anything I need to do, let me know. I'll be right here, And I was very, very professional because I also see down the road, you never know, they might need my help later, Absolutely. And then I've learned it, and we made a lot of money from them too, or with them.
My favorite client, my absolute favorite client. I won't disclose who they are, but I have learned so much from this person and their businesses because there's been so many opportunities where I have seen there almost be like a lawsuit, like in one where that person is totally righteous in that position and they should do it and they should pursue it. And, we're ready to burn the bridges and to just go at it. And, I step in and I start feeling that too. I'm like, this is unfair. You have been fair the whole time. And we take a step back, we calm down, and we figure out a solution, and we don't file. And then 6 months later, these guys are putting together a 2 times as big of the deal and moving forward on big things. And so I have learned from this person that the industry is small, that it is not worth burning a bridge if you don't have to. And by creating a compromise solution and something that works well for both of you, everybody wins. You can do more deals with this person in the future and grow your business. It's just next time you'll have a better agreement. You'll have a better contract and you'll negotiate from a stronger position because you know what to look for in your agreements.
I like that saying you said at first. You negotiate like your enemies, and then so you can work together like your friends. That's like, because then you're addressing. It's kind of like what's the prenup. You say, hey, these are my issues. As long as you don't mess with these, and then you can move on with life. And then it's nothing to do with I don't love you. It's just like, hey, these are my parameters. This is how you treat me. This is how you don't treat me, and then we move on. I like that a lot. That sounds like I need better contracts. No. So this is also perfect for me because I've been
Let me say this too. It's not just contracts, right?
Yeah.
Everyone thinks that what legal work is just the initial contract, the initial agreement, but it's more than contracts. You need an attorney that helps you navigate the entire journey. Sometimes that's just bouncing an idea off of, hey, what do you think about this? Sometimes it's just helping you put together like a more secure employee handbook. Yeah. Or it's someone who's like helping you to know how to make sure that your website is ADA compliant. Because if your website is not ADA compliant, you could quickly get a $10,000 demand letter in the mail when it's not. Simple things like that, that you need a lawyer who has an understanding to be able to say, here's how we grow your business because I am invested in you and you are invested in your business for growth. So even more than contract, it's the full representation.
Yeah, I'm saying like I need a contract, like I need the whole setup. So what would you say is more important when you're first getting started? Is the contract or the contracts lawyer, or just a lawyer developing a relationship with a lawyer or an accountant?
Oh, that's a great question. So I would say, first and foremost, the most important thing to do is to get an attorney on board. Because as you're forming your business, you need to make sure it's structured properly. You need to make sure your partnership agreements are all in place in case there's any issues with your partners or when you're raising funding, how that money gets used. Also, those contracts will make sure that whoever you're working with, that no one just depletes the funds and takes off for a great weekend to Cancun. So you want to make sure that that's very secure and organized well and everything else. The nice thing with accountants, and again, I'm not an accountant, and my accountant is excellent. So I'm not going to badmouth accountants at all. But something that you want to be aware of is that your accountant is someone that's going to be tracking your money as you go and hopefully helping you with your taxes at the end of the year. So with that focus of, hey, they're going to help me as the money comes in, your initial focus should be, how do I make my money and protect it so that I can pay my accountant, my taxes, and everything else? So I think that the most important thing that you can do, you got this idea, talk to an attorney and say, hey, realistically, what do I need here? And they'll tell you, you need to form your company. You need to protect your IP. You need to have good employment contracts so you're not going to get sued from the state, from your employees, from whomever, and have really good partnership agreements so that your money doesn't disappear. The amount of times that I have seen really good people lose their businesses, their entire businesses, because they worked with shady people that had too much access to the funds and pilfered those funds. It's unreal. And so where you're in a new company, you need to protect everything. It needs to all be clear so that you can grow this thing and know that your time and investment is going to pay you, in 6 months or a year or whatever it might be.
So structure, how would you, so I'm just going to use my example. I'm a 50-50 partner right now in a solar company. But it was more of just kind of like a handshake deal. It's a guy I've known. My partner is a guy I've known ever since he was 15, so I've known him for years and years and years. But we didn't structure any of that. We just said, hey, let's go into business. He had some crews and I had some work. And so we, went like that. How would you structure a 50-50 partnership? And like, how important are setting up the roles for each other? Like, this is your thing. And then do you have like penalties? And like, if he decides, I decide I want to give away half of my shares or whatever, because we don't have shares, right? Because we haven't structured it right, but we give away a percentage of the company, and then we also want to bring new partners on. So how do you set up that structure?
Yeah, great question. So one of my best friends, Jake Hess, who's one of my first clients in the solar industry, him and I have had handshake deals that I go, Jake, for you, like, let's put together a contract. And Jake goes, I know you, like, we've been really good friends for years. Like, why would I need a contract with you? And I go, it's not that you need a contract with me. It's that it keeps it clear between both of us. Let's just say hypothetically that, Jake and I started a company together. Okay. We build this great solar company. Everything's going great. We have this handshake deal. And next thing we know, I get hit by a bus, right? I'm gone. And now my executor of my estate has to come along and go, well, what do I do here? What are you owed? And, Jake's an upfront guy. He'd say, hey, John, John and I share half the business. It's half ours. But what does that person who doesn't know then have to come into that scenario and go, well, is that real? Or did John own 100%? Or does Jake own, more, or whatever it might be? People always look at it as, only if I get into a lawsuit or a dispute with my partner is this going to happen. But the reality is life happens, and life is unpredictable, and you need to make sure that that's clear. Let's say that you're getting divorced and you own a company, okay, and now your ex-spouse is saying, hey, I want what's mine, or I helped you build this, or this is a joint marital asset. How are they going to identify how much of that company that they own without that being a clear agreement? And so when you have it clear and it's there and it's structured, it's not a dispute anymore. It's written, it's clear. Otherwise, you could be looking at, your business partner getting deposed. You could get deposed. There's so many issues there. So even when you love, you trust the person, put in an agreement so that it's clear, so that everything's above board. If there's ever an issue, you have a writing in place that's there. Second to that, I would make sure that you are being clear in your expectations with your partner in your agreement. So yeah, great. You know this guy. You generally know what he's bringing to the table. But what happens if this guy develops? What if he develops a drug problem? What if he becomes an alcoholic? What if he develops amnesia and no longer understands what he's supposed to do, and you have to replace him? Well, some new guy comes along and says, I don't know what he was doing for his share or what his duties were, what his roles were. So all of that becomes very clear when you set it up in the agreement. An operating agreement is something that every company needs. It needs to be very clear in the duties and expectations of each person. But besides that, it's just helpful for everyone to know,
Yeah.
here's my 9 to 5, what I got to produce for you. And anything beyond that is something that's, good to understand for shares and bonuses, stock interest, things like that. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And when I'm talking to you, when you talk to a different attorney, it sounds all scary. I'm like, fuck, I don't even know where to start or what to do. But that's why it's also important to talk to somebody that's like you're a lawyer in the solar industry, so it helps a lot. Kind of how you've probably seen a lot of businesses, so you know how they're structured. And a lot of businesses are started like that. Just, hey, let's go into business. We have a truck and a trailer, and let's roll.
I can tell you, even with Jake. Jake is a handshake guy because he keeps his word. He's straight up. He works with people. He shakes hands, and that's it. And I'm always the one that's like, Jake, let's make sure we get the agreement in. And he goes, oh yeah, you're right. Let's organize it. Let's get it done. And Jake's very successful in the industry, but he's now at this point in time that it is paramount to have those agreements in place. Because if they're not in place, come a year from now, when everyone's expectations change or differ, you're arguing over something that you shouldn't be.
Yeah. This happens so many times in my life where I'll pay somebody and I'll expect something, and they expected something else. We didn't have an agreement of anything. He's like, hey, it'll cost 10 grand for you to work with me. Okay, here's your 10 grand. Okay, he's going to change my life. I'm going to be a new person after the end of this. And then you're still the same person at the end of it. And you're like, fuck. I thought he was going to do this and this and this and this. Sometimes you're talking to a sales guy and he's like, hey, I'll help you do, like a good sales guy is going to help you do whatever you need done, basically, Oh yeah. But then you have like one or two little things that you expected that thing to be done. And then he thought it was just the big thing, like a lot of times in selling solar, the customer, even after she got her system all installed, she wants her little gift card that's $50. You're like, fuck, I didn't even, it's something that the sales guy promised her. And I was like, oh, well, fuck, we'll throw that in. Like,
it's funny you say that, Stockley. That I actually think is one of the biggest risks that companies have is they don't create a strong employee handbook, or they don't have very strong guidelines for any of their sales reps. And so you get these sales reps out there promising, everything to these people. And they're acting effectively as agents, binding the company to whatever they're promising. So then you get this sweet little old lady that was promised all of these things. The sales rep may or may not use some form of deceptive sales technique or deceptive practice. And next thing you know, this company is getting, a $500,000 lawsuit from the attorney general of the state. I mean, these are really, really serious things. Besides the fact that it legally creates huge issues for the company, it doesn't look good for the solar industry. It hurts the brand. It hurts the credibility of what we do in this industry and the type of people that we are because of these, these bad actors.
Yeah, because then that lady goes and says, these guys promised me something, I didn't get it. And then people think, oh, solar's a scam. But no, it's because you didn't get your little gift card. It's nothing to do with her solar system, but it does just put a black eye on the industry. And that's a big reason why we decided to get into sales too, is because we were just doing the fulfillment side. And a lot of times we'd show up and the ladies would say, hey, I'm going to be able to shut my power off, right? And just use solar. And we're like, no. And, or they said, I'm getting 100% backup. And this is a 5 kilowatt battery. It's not a, it's little things like that the homeowner expects, and it's their little things, and then it becomes a big deal because they make the rest of the solar people look bad that are actually trying to help people.
Well, and how easy would that fix be, right? For example, hypothetical here. You got one company that tells their sales reps, hey, I like you because you're a great salesman. Get out there and bring us some sales. Versus you have another company that says, all right, let's have a salesperson meeting. They pull everybody into a room or a Zoom meeting and they go, I've sent you out a PDF that has our general sales pitch, our do's and our don'ts, our guidelines of what you can and cannot say, things like that. and being very, very clear in the expectation of salespeople when they're out there. Because then, let's say a little old lady gets mad and goes, "Hey, I was promised I was going to have $1 million, from installing solar," which, you see crazy things like that. Now, you as a company, when that lawsuit occurs, you go, "Well, if that was done, that was not our instruction. In fact, we told the salesperson all of these things, and take a look at all of our documentation. In fact, I can show you all of our meeting minutes that we've recorded and controlled. And here's the PDFs, here's the manual, here's the handbook." You are going to mitigate all of that liability from one reckless salesperson and save yourself, well, potentially from bankrupting your company. Even a very successful company could be bankrupted very easily. So,
Yeah.
and that's just something that an attorney would know, that would look at what your scenario is and search to protect you in different ways that you might not see as a business owner.
So do you think, what's more important on like an operating agreement with like I was telling you with this company, do you think I should have just had a better contract with better like steps and better stipulations, or when do you think it's also a good idea to try to lean these jobs, put a pre-lien and try to lean these jobs, especially as like a sales rep or an installer?
So, so first and foremost, I always say this: you don't have to be right to sue somebody. You also don't have to be wrong to breach a contract. So the reality is, imperfect people make imperfect decisions, and no one is perfect. And so as a result, it doesn't really matter what you do necessarily, because you could have the most perfect contract in place, the most perfect relationship with this person, and still have that person breach their agreement with you. What I find is important are your relationships, your communication with your attorney, and having access to an attorney who can give you specific for that person, specific advice. Because sometimes you want to sue, and other times you just want to negotiate. Sometimes you want to do nothing. And having an attorney who says, "Let's wait and see," is a very, very powerful asset to have for a company. So yeah, I think that's the most important thing, other than saying, "Well, in that scenario, you should have tightened up your contract," or "In this scenario, you should have done X, Y, Z." Because really, honestly, you want an attorney who's there in the moment and can advise you in the moment. And I can't tell you specifically what would have fixed it, because maybe nothing would have too. But I can tell you, moving forward, did you learn from that?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So unfortunately, you spent, roughly 20 grand plus all the interest of what you were owed in that school of education, versus if you had an attorney who was there in the moment, they could have said, we're going to renegotiate this agreement and either tail in maybe what you're owed in a new settlement agreement. We're going to tack on interest. We're going to maybe 10 different things. And I'm fairly certain you would have paid a lot less than 20 grand.
Yeah. Well, that was one. We've had one where the guy, and I feel like it's because of me too. I have I do a lot of like loose agreements, okay, we'll do this. We'll try to help, because we're very like, hey, you need help and you're willing to pay. Fuck yeah, we'll go do it. That's how I have been. Right. So I get into these situations where they expected X, Y, Z, and I expected X, Y, Z, and I'm billing them 70 grand or something for a job. And they're like, "Oh, I don't even have that money in it." I'm like, "I told you straight up, this is what it's going to be, and time and material, and
Yeah.
But yeah, I do learn, but I'm sick of fucking having these, very expensive learning experiences.
So I always tell clients this the first time they get sued, right? It is a great moment. I celebrate with clients, depending on where we're at. Like sometimes I'll send them a bottle of champagne and I tell them to open it and celebrate. Because if you get sued, it probably means you've done potentially something right.
Yeah.
Or if you've had to sue somebody, potentially, it means that you're doing something right, because you're big enough now to where it matters. So you should never fault yourself for having necessarily legal issues. But having a lawyer tell you what legal issues matter is paramount, because everyone squabbles. So many people in this industry get so upset over things that don't matter, that you need somebody with a level head that can take a look and understands what you're looking at and say, hey, ignore that. We're not even going to respond to that. We're going to do this, and that's going to be how we move forward. Obviously, you as the business owner or the client, they're always in charge of litigation. They're always in charge of what takes place. But you need an attorney who is there for you as a client, who steps in and says, here's how we're moving this forward, because this is what's going to be best for you. So, I mean, that's really how you do it.
So if you're let's say you're a sales rep and what is your recourse? If you're a sales rep, you're owed 15, 20 grand from a company. They're either not talking to you anymore or they're saying you're screwed. Are you screwed? Or how do you go
Well,
about that?
that's a difficult question, right? So you have to take a look at what the sales agreement or the employment agreement, whatever it might be. You have to take a look at what it says. The language in employment agreements is largely what's going to bind. So far too often in this industry, there'll be a $50 contract that somebody printed off online that gets circulated and they sign it. And then the business then will text them 50 other things after the fact, or they'll call them and say, hey, don't worry this. And it contradicts what's in that agreement. And the problem is that when everything breaks down, they go, well, hey, Tim told me that this and this and this, and this is how this was going to happen. And the problem is usually what's in that contract is what you're going to be bound to. So first and foremost, you need to know what's in the contract, and you need to have usually an attorney who knows how to read that contract, take a look and see what's in it. The second thing is you need to think about how much is owed. So every state has different thresholds for small claims courts. If you are within a threshold that makes sense as an individual to file a claim in small claims, that probably is your easiest and fastest resolution for it. But you need to make sure it's very clear in how you were paid and what you were paid and what you are owed. That's very, very important in the terms of your agreement. I have had clients that just asked me to take a look at their employment agreements. And when I took a look at it, I said, you could file in a court above small claims, but it will cost you more in legal fees. Why don't you just file in small claims, reduce what you're owed, and pursue it? But be careful of these terms in your agreement. And having somebody who understands where your weak spots are and can provide some of that advice is really helpful. I actually probably reject more clients than we take. We do not take every case. But the reason isn't necessarily because, of the individual or the case itself. It's because a lot of times if I can save a client money by instructing them to go to small claims and do it on their own, I'm going to do that. I'm going to give you the best legal advice that I can, even if it necessarily isn't the best for my firm. Because at the end of the day, I want this industry to be better, to treat people, each other better, and to be more honest and ethical.
Yeah, I think that's a cool thing about the solar industry is most people in it, they do want that exactly. They're trying to help people. That's the whole. I think it's one of the best industries because one, you can help people, you can help yourself, you help the government, you help the community, and you help the climate. Like it's like one of those. It's kind of like oil. It's a win-win around. I mean, it's better than oil, but it's like one of those industries that it requires a lot of different industries to make this industry work. But most of the people in this industry, they genuinely want to help other people. And then they get to make money on top of that, but then there's like 1 or 2 or 5 or 15 bad apples, that kind of fuck it up for everybody else. But that's why this stuff's important.
I always use this example, Stockley. Forgive me because it's a little graphic, but I always say it's like somebody took a poop in the pool, effectively, right? Like it's disgusting. Everyone's getting out of the pool. It doesn't matter if it's a large pool. It doesn't matter. People get out of that thing. And that's why we have to really focus on the bad actors because any amount of bad actors, it taints the entire pool. And when you have clear contracts, it eliminates that person that's taken a deuce in the pool.
No deucing in the pool.
That's right. Exactly.
So what are some of the things that you hate about working with the solar people?
Okay, so this is another good one. So I have seen in the solar industry so many young people that create great success for themselves individually, and they do it so quickly and so well, and then they go, "Oh, I'm just going to start my own business." And then they start their own business, and they use the same logic in how they made their money in how they run their business, which is usually sprint, run as fast as I can to keep making money. And they don't slow down to first look at the problems to build a good foundation. And so they're 10 steps ahead at getting these lawsuits when if they had slowed down in the start and said, okay, let me do this right. Let me just spend the money now to do it right. It just sets them up for success. And so the problem in the solar industry is you deal with so many highly motivated, highly talented individuals that when they are like 8 months down the road and they've now got a legal problem, they're like, oh yeah, I got this issue. I need you to fix it. And the problem is, as an attorney, I'm always like coming in with a fire hose after the fact. Instead, if they just called me, at worst, we've got like a fire extinguisher situation.
Yeah.
But instead, I got to bring
Yeah.
in a whole team of firefighters to put out this little fire. So I would say that's the most frustrating thing in this industry, is that sometimes people's ambition overwhelms good, sound logic reasoning. So people don't do it.
Oh,
I would also say
that's
maybe like one other issue. Mhm.
go ahead.
I was just going to say one other issue is that I think there's a lot of ego in the solar field. Almost everybody that hits high levels of success has a very strong ego. And so
Hmm.
what you have to find is someone that can see through that to be able to give good advice, because everyone's ego is involved in a lawsuit. And the parties
Hmm.
who really control the lawsuit, if you get a bad attorney, they will fuel that ego and push you to do more and more and more litigation. Because if I'm an hourly attorney, I'm going to want
Yeah.
to bill you hourly like crazy. And you fuel that
Mhm.
ego to drive that. Versus if you get an attorney who doesn't invest in that ego and just says, like, I know you for you. And I know you're a good guy, and so I don't need the big flash or anything else. I'm here to give you good
Yeah.
advice because I know who you
Yeah.
are. It stops that cycle, and it's good. But most of these people with high egos hire a high ego attorney, and as a
Hmm.
result, you're in litigation over these things sometimes for years for no reason. So that's the
Yeah.
other really
Yeah.
frustrating
Because
thing. I was
Yep, because we hire based on not what we need, but based on who we like. You're like,
Of course,
oh, I like this guy, so you know.
yeah,
Because
that's actually why
go
if you look
ahead.
at attorney infomercials or commercials online or commercials whatever, take a look at how many of them have these sayings like we're a bulldog, we're gonna go
Yeah.
fight, we're gonna be the
Yeah.
sledgehammer. They do that because most people's egos tell them that's the type of attorney that they need, but that
Hmm.
is so far from the truth. And in reality, all
Hmm.
that does is put more money in the attorney's pocket. Sure, I'll
Yeah.
litigate a case for the next 2 years, and I'll put my kids through a very nice
Yeah.
college. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Or how about
Yeah.
this? How about I just resolve this issue for you this month? We take out
Yeah.
our things, we informally resolve it, we don't file, we negotiate that process, or we go to mediation, and I save you hundreds of thousands of dollars because we resolve it without ego. That's the
Yeah.
solution. That's the big difference.
Yeah. The last, so I got a speeding ticket a little while ago. I was on my motorcycle doing like 80 or 90 and a 35 or something like that.
You're not
Being very
admitting to any
careful. Not
hypothetically there's
allegedly. Allegedly, this happened.
thank you. Yeah, a
Allegedly,
friend of yours. Yeah,
yeah, somebody I know. But
I
anyway,
like
then
that.
the lawyer I hired, and the reason why I hired him because he's like, yeah, we're gonna fight for you, we're gonna fucking kill him. And I was like, oh, dude, this sounds exactly what I need. Because obviously, when
Of course.
you're dealing with the police, and you're like, fuck these guys, they're after me, even though you're the one that
Yeah.
was allegedly speeding. But it's
Oh
funny
yeah.
that you say that because yeah, that is especially in business the last thing, because if you have two tempers flaring, then you're never gonna get anywhere. You just fight,
Yeah.
fight, fight, and both of you think you're right no matter what. So
Well, I got to
it's kind
tell
of
you,
funny.
so I clerked for a judge when I was in law school, Judge Honeycutt, located in Torrance, California, and he did a lot of like felony crimes, things like that. But he still to this day is probably the most influential judge I've ever been before, because he taught me a very valuable lesson, which was he brought in multiple attorneys into his chambers, and we got to meet him and things like that. And there was this one that he brought in one day that was a very unassuming old man. He came in a very frumpy sweater. He was probably one of the most soft-spoken attorneys I've ever met in my life. Very kind, very patient, very nice. And when he left the judge's chambers, the judge said, "I got to tell you, this guy has represented, a lot of bad dudes, a lot of cartels, a lot of very aggressive people, and he gets phenomenal results. He negotiates with prosecutors. He gets his clients to take good deals." And he said the difference is this man doesn't come in with an ego. This man comes in with a goal and understands the problem and focuses on those two things. And sure enough, he was a brilliant trial attorney when you actually saw him in trial. But most of his cases settled pretrial because people
Hmm.
loved him. They wanted to see him,
Yeah.
and when they came in, they're like, "Oh, it's so good to see you." And they give him a little hug, and judges
Yeah.
love to see him too because they just knew that he
Hmm.
was going to be honest and ethical, and move the case forward. And and everything else. And, he has a very successful practice. But I learned from that judge something, that it's not about this huge, aggressive personalities, the guy that we're going to come in, we're going to just torch this place. You want the guy that has the personality that's going to get the job done, that you're going to also want to be able to talk to, and not, be like, oh, this guy's going to bill me $9 million for this phone call. So
that's what we forget. I feel like that's what I forget. You think the law is the law and it's hard, but it's also, you're still dealing with people, whenever we travel abroad and we come back home, whenever we go almost anywhere else, we go into their country. The most of the time, the border agents are the nicest people in the world, and then we come back to America, they're always like, rah, rah. So it's like a very distinct, distinct thing that you see traveling outside the border, and you understand like not everything is like everything has a personal factor. Like how you treat people and how they treat you and how you act has a big influence on how shitty your life will be or how good it will be.
Yeah, it's something I quickly realized when I first got into practice. So I was in federal litigation right at the very start of my practice. And we were dealing with some very, very big charges, a lot, like hundreds of millions of dollars. Our cases made national news. And I quickly realized that who you are in this industry is paramount. And it's not just even with judges or your clients, but it's with other attorneys. Because when you get in a negotiation with other attorneys for your clients, more often than not, those attorneys are working to find the resolution for their clients, one that meets both clients' needs, so that you can resolve it. If you have a good attorney, that's what they're going to be focusing on. They're going to be working with the other side's attorney, making those phone calls, sending those emails, and more so asking how their weekend was. Did you have a good holiday? How was dinner? Tell me about your girlfriend. Oh, I'm so sorry that your kid's sick. Text me.
Yeah.
I have settled more cases because I'm a decent person to the other side than I have won, simply because I'm a better attorney. So yeah, I think it's paramount that you have an attorney who's not an a-hole, who, wants to work with you and find a resolution for the other side. That's a compromise. Compromise is paramount in the law. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then the last question I have is, if you're a company and you're already started, you're already been running a couple of years, and you don't have any of this stuff done, you don't have especially the operating agreements, the agreements with your partners. How do you get started? What would you recommend? Where would they go?
So it's very simple. First thing that you can do is contact my law firm. So Solar Legal, you can find us at thelawyersforsolar.com. We're also going to be speaking at SolarCon this year. So come to SolarCon, come talk to me, come see what's going on.
If you're in the industry, definitely come to SolarCon. 100%.
It's going to be huge. This year, I'm so excited. The speakers are unreal. The event's going to be nuts. So SolarCon is one of my clients, and I can't disclose all the cool things that are happening, but I can tell you this is the year not to miss it. So if you're on the fence, make sure you come.
And I'll give everyone else a little tip too. If you want to get the best networking, if they offer a pre-day, definitely come to the pre-day. The pre-day last time we went is by far the best. I met the most industry high hitters or heavy hitters, and it was I was able to talk with them like personally. And then once everybody got there, obviously it was amazing. But the pre-day is awesome.
Well, I'll be there if anybody comes and has questions. They can also email me. I'll provide my contact information, but my email is very simple, john@thelawyersforsolar.com. So,
awesome.
But really, contact an attorney, period. It's like this. If you had cancer, today you found out, you went to the doctor and you found out you had cancer and you didn't know, but you've been doing okay the last couple of years. You're a little sick, but for the most part, you're fine, still had a good life and everything else. And the doctor goes, we found cancer. Are you then going to take a look at that and say, well, all right, it's been working pretty good for the last couple of years, so we'll just see what happens? No, of course not. You're gonna say, all right, doctor, what do I do? And he's going to say, let's start some treatment. Let's see what we can do to get you well. And we are no different. Talk to an attorney, find out where the cancer is in your business and eradicate it so that you can have a healthy and successful and thriving business. And I'd recommend that no matter where you're at the start, in the middle. If you're going to close your business, maybe there's a good possibility to sell your company that you didn't even think about. Or if you're an individual and somebody owes you some money and you go, I just don't know what to do. Talk to an attorney. We're
Yep.
not that scary. Look at this face. You see me in a dark alley, you're not going to be scared. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
call us. Let's see what
Yep.
we can do for you. Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, I have some action steps that I'm already going to do to set up
Great.
myself and my business to be a little bit better. And appreciate you coming on. Appreciate everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Sounds
Take
great.
care.
Thanks. See ya.
See ya.